Hello, everyone, and welcome to Dr. Judy WPF. And with me, I have Christiana Davidson, my wonderful therapist from London originally, who made a hop, skip, and jump over to the Caribbean and is all the better for it. So now, Christiana, you have to wake up at you have to do the show at 12 p.m. Caribbean.
12 a.m.
I'm sorry, 12 a.m. Okay, versus 4 a.m. when you live in London. So no wonder you look so fresh. Okay. So thank you so much for joining in, and thank you, audience, for joining in. And we're going to wrap a little bit, and then we're going to take some calls. The topic for today, because we've been doing a series of YouTubes on narcissism and sexuality. And tonight's episode is titled The Narcissist and Sex in Romantic Relationships. And we were just talking earlier how maybe I should have titled it How to Get Screwed by Sleeping with a Narcissist. So with that said, Christiana, I'll let you get serious about the topic. Go ahead.
All right. Well, that's a great opening, Dr. Judy, because it literally sums it up. If we think about narcissism, what is it about? Narcissists are out to control. And how do they control? They control through the trauma bond. So when we're thinking about the narcissist and sex in romantic relationships, we need to see it through that light. It's about control. And in the sexual act, there's going to be the formation of the trauma bond. So love bomb, discard, intimate and reinforcement. That's all going to play a part in the sexual relationship with a narcissist.
Yes.
It's extremely impactful because the sexual act is so powerful. Mm-hmm. Now, the aim of the narcissist, when you first meet them, you may be attracted, either by their charisma and their sort of charismatic personality, their physical attractiveness, that may draw you in, and they're aware of that. Or it may be their sort of Mr. Nice Guy, quirky sort of intellectual type more than the big grandiose type. You'll be drawn in to that attraction at the start, and the narcissist will begin the seduction of you. That is their aim, is to seduce you into wanting to deeply connect with them. They're wanting to set up with you. They're wanting to create an attachment bond between you and them. So they'll want to get you to have sex with them as soon as possible, really, because it's about a boundary violation. Narcissists want to break down your boundaries. And, the physical boundary is a huge one. If they can conquer that, then they've got you. Mm-hmm. And this goes for men and women. Women will seduce men, draw them in, conquer them sexually, and the man will be, deeply connected to her and have the most amazing sex perhaps at the start, but then she might start to withdraw from that. Or she might start to criticize or demean him in some way and start to set up the sort of intimate and reinforcement that comes after the love bomb stage.
Including making it conditional. So
Yes.
If they have the power and control, now they can say, well, if you, for example, buy me things and do things for me, then that'll increase your chances of having more sex with me. And this can go both ways. And so again, it's not about intimacy. That's the key. So sex is not about intimacy. It's about objectification of a human being.
Yeah.
So that's why it's so dangerous, especially as you said, Christiana, the violation of the body, okay, the boundary. So what could be more intimate than sexual intercourse? Any kind of sexual contact where you smell and taste the person and you see the person, and hear their voice, and all of these senses. You know, we have 5 senses: sense of touch, sense of smell, sense of taste, sense of hearing. What am I missing? The visual. Okay. So you've got all of that, and all of that is stimulated in the act of sex. And so there is a chemical bonding going on.
Yes.
And most of this occurs in certain age brackets. So when women, for example, are in the menstrual age bracket, they're more prone hormonally to bond to a man. And in general, men are less monogamous than women. So they can really have sex with several partners without truly bonding. So it's really a one-way street. It's a one-way ticket to hell, because if the woman is now bonded to the man without any commitment, right? And especially if she gets pregnant, you know, that's another layer on top of it. Or if she gets a disease, let's say she gets herpes, and now she's not very marketable because she's got to tell her partners, if she's ethical, that she has a venereal disease, you know, and so in other words, people put themselves in a very, very vulnerable situation without vetting the person.
Absolutely. And that's crucial, because as we know, you know, at the start of a narcissistic relationship, all you're seeing is the false self. You're not actually seeing the true person. And so many people jump into the relationship, it becomes physical really early on, and they're already, you know, they've already given all to somebody who's just there to take and discard.
Yes.
And when it comes to, you know, the sexual act, I mean, it is you can't really give more than that. You know, that is you offering yourself in your entirety in some ways to another person.
Absolutely. So, you know, we are energetically divided. Well, not divided, because we're integrated into mind, body, soul, right? So this is not just about our body or our emotions and our mind. It's also about a soul connection. You're leaving yourself vulnerable. The problem is that one is connecting and the other is not. One is deepening the bond and the other is objectifying the person. And so it's not really a fair playground here. It's an unequal game.
And also, if we also put it in light of the fact that, you know, for the narcissist, everybody is an object. And so every object in their lives needs to mirror back to them. It needs to be a positive mirror back to them. So for the narcissist, having sex with somebody else is only so that they can sort of boost their esteem. They can get supply from it. So if, you know, if your partner is a narcissist, they'll be having sex with you not because they're trying to pleasure you or, you know, are interested in your experience, only in as much as it makes them feel more idolized or more grandiose or more more in love with themselves, in other words.
More in love with themselves. And yes, they can be very pleasing, because the pleasing part is so that you'll want them more. Like, look how great I can perform. It's more of a performance. It's more of a, I'm going to please you to get you really, really stuck on me. And then I'll toy with you. So if I want to show up, I show up. If I don't want to show up, I don't show up. And so there's really no synergy in these kinds of relationships, which I make a really big deal about in my treatment plan, and we do, because we're really mind mapping people from childhood wounds through their reactions and encodings, and taking them through the process of unraveling the unhealthy parts of the self, so that we can shift out of the mess and bring people into a relationship of synergy, which is where there is a give and take. There's a sharing and a receiving. There's a mutuality. There is a we as opposed to a me. In the case of narcissism, it's a me, not a we. So they may act like a we temporarily. However, it's on their terms. So if the other one speaks out and says, well, what about me? They may say, well, yeah, don't worry, I'll take care of you. So they future fake. Yeah, I'll of course I'll marry you. You know, we've been together now for 8 years. Of course I'll marry you. The ring is on its way.
You're so patient. Yeah.
Right, Amazon's a little slow.
Don't pressure me. Yeah.
Right, the cubic zirconium company that I ordered the ring from, I think they might have gone out of business. So you get the drift, that they're really not that invested. And I personally have heard statements like, yes, give me 2 years and I'll marry you. Like, what do you want? You want a rock? So the gaslighting. So yes, I'll marry you. And then when you say, hey, you know, it's been a couple of years, where are we? It's like, what do you expect? A rock? And so
exactly.
But
this is the thing, you know, this is the nature of these relationships. You know, at the start, the chemistry can be off the charts. It can be so powerful, and you do get so lured in. This is like, you know, this person is your soulmate. They will tell you that you're theirs as well. You'll feel like there's something just so enormous between you that it's, you know, you're meant to be together.
Yes.
They'll be love bombing you. You'll be getting high from the love bombing. They're getting high by love bombing you, because that's also supply, because that's them taking control. And then you'll come together. You'll have the most amazing sex sometimes, but at some point, that's going to change, because the value of your supply diminishes over time. They've got you. There's no, you know, there's the potency of your idealization of them starts to wane. And that's when the sort of demeaning, devaluing may begin. And it often starts in the bedroom, actually, where there might be remarks made, you know, you're very vulnerable in that place, and you know, things like, oh, talking about your weight, or you know, suggesting you push the boundaries in some type of sexual act, or and then demeaning you for not being good enough or normal, or that kind of sort of drip feed, that you're just not the supply that they'd hoped. You're a disappointment.
And of course, then, as you said, pushing the boundaries and having you do things sexually that you may not be comfortable with, and maybe even including other people in the sexual act.
Yes.
Like, I mean, you know, really would be fun to have a menage a trois. And it would be really fun to watch porn and lap dance with other people. You know, it's fun. We'll keep it between us. It's just that the sexual energy is very precious. So the sexual energy between two people is supposed to be between two people. And when you have porn involved, and when you have menage a trois involved, and you have other stimulation outside the sexual relationship, even emotional affairs, or people who have multiple partners, right? It's not concentrated. So there's no, it's like a leaky system. It doesn't really build, it doesn't create a safe bubble. It's not protected. And so therefore it doesn't grow.
No. And you know, part of the way that you that the narcissist takes you over actually is to start breaking down your ethical code, your moral code, because that's part of your own control over you, and that's got to be diminished. So they're going to push at these boundaries to assert their dominance over you, so that you at the end you have no sense of yourself left. It's like you've abandoned yourself. That's what they want, is total abandonment for them.
That's a great point. Self-abandonment. So I want to talk about positive projection, something that I want to do a whole show on. And I don't know if it's a term that I came up with, and if I did, great. If not, I give credit to the person who did. Positive projection, in my mind, is when you give credit where credit is not earned. Okay? So in other words, you meet a man or a woman and you think, wow, this person is amazing. Why are they amazing? Well, they have big blue eyes, don't they? They dress so sharp. They just treated me to a really big meal. They do this for me and that. And so suddenly they're imbued with all kinds of characteristics that don't necessarily, those characteristics were not earned by them, and they haven't passed the test of time. Okay, they haven't really passed any stress tests either. So everybody could be on good behavior on honeymoon, but throw in some financial difficulties and some physical ailments and dirty diapers and so on. It's a whole different picture. So people positive, so I'm talking about the partner of the narcissist, for example, might positively project onto the narcissist all kinds of qualities. It's like they're extrapolating information from little bits and pieces of their behavior, and they're making it grand. So they're expanding on the accolades of this person, and then they're responding on that level, thinking that, well, this person's so great, of course it's safe to be romantic with this person. Of course he's got integrity, or she's got integrity. Of course they're going to marry me. Of course they're going to take care of me. And then, lo and behold, the whole system collapses. Okay.
So that's kind of a bit like idealization, isn't it? Almost like a shared idealization process that goes on a bit. Yeah,
it is. And then the other thing I want to obviously talk about, because we always do, is where does this all come from? Are people just born this way, to set up this way, to behave this way? Where does this come from? So I always like to go back to my mind map and panel 1 and wounds of childhood. And I hear a lot of cases on a daily basis, and just fresh in my mind is a recent case. I'll just call it case number XYZ, okay, where the person is really deeply embroiled in another human being, but the other human being is not on board, but gaslights to act as if they are on board. Okay. So when you go into the cause behind it, then you could see that this thing was set up way before either one of the people in the relationship was born. So behind the scenes is a multi-generational string of unhealed parents: mom, dad, grandma, grandfather, great-grandparents. And all of these people bring their unhealed wounds into the psyche of the next generation. And these wounds include abuse, neglect, and particularly the narcissistic wound, which is the wound of apathy, objectification, selfishness, I don't care about you kind of attitude. Okay. And so they're bringing that and they're teaching that to their children. And so the children are then primed to act disconnected because they don't know what connection is. Because connection, if you go back to attachment theory and John Bowlby, starts with the mother and the infant connection, eye contact, skin contact, breastfeeding, attunement, mirroring, a family intact, a father who trickles down love to the mother so that she can nurture her baby. So again, I'm a systems thinker, as you all know, or those of you who've been watching. And so you've got to take into consideration the entire system. And in the narcissistic system, there is no trickle down. It all trickles up to them. They're elevating themselves through every one of the relationships that they're involved in. And sometimes the involvement is really substantial, financial involvement and all kinds of levels of involvement. And sometimes the relationship is very uninvolved, okay, like a one-night stand or a week's wonderful honeymoon phase and then ghosted, okay?
Yes.
Right.
And it kind of, that what you're saying, Dr. Judy, it also kind of ties in, with the psychosexual development stages, because the narcissistic type is stuck at that sort of phallic stage, usually, according to Freud's stages of development.
Yes.
So they're narcissistic and they're focused on gratification for themselves. There's no empathy at that age. So this is what's playing out in the bedroom as well.
Right, and you had mentioned several times on different shows that they're stuck at a developmental age of about 2, 3, 4, 5 years old, like that. Okay, so
up to 7, they say.
Okay,
but generally it's the lower end.
Right, and we have no evidence of exactly what age. However, we do have evidence that they're highly immature. Okay, so sometimes the symptoms are the hieroglyphics that point to the entire system gone wrong. So we have evidence. They're shallow. They don't have the depth and the empathy. They don't know how to share and care. They don't know how to self-reflect and self-correct. They don't know how to own their own stuff, which is the self-reflect, self-correct part of life. They have no reason or desire for commitment because that's just too much. Okay, that requires too much maturity and too much responsibility. And
why would you want that when you can drop that toy and go to the next one?
Exactly. So it's like a kid.
Why would you commit to one? Yeah.
Right. Think of a kid picks up a toy and then it's all fun and games, and then they get bored with the toy and toss it aside, and they pick up a new toy, and shiny object syndrome. That toy looks.
But they might keep it there for a bit, in case they want to come back to it. But fling it to the side.
Oh, that's a wonderful point. Okay, so I call that putting people in formaldehyde. So let's say they need that spare tire at some point.
Yes, exactly.
Right, like a toy. They don't, maybe the new toy will be boring or it'll break. So maybe they'll run out of toys and they'll have to go back
to them all.
I want them all. Maybe I'll play with the old toy for a minute or two. So if somebody becomes that old toy, how do they stay an old toy? Well, they stay there because they're toxically love bonded to the person. And so,
addicted.
Right. And then every once in a while, they will ding them with a little text message. Hey, honey, miss you. But look for the signs. Is there any follow-up? No, just a little text. So if the person responds and says, miss you too, when am I going to see you? You're going to hear crickets.
and some people get, they're under the illusion that, oh my goodness, they must be thinking of me then and, missing me. And, I'm sure they're sad like I'm sad, and maybe they're longing for me.
Right. No, and so that's projection. So now that person is projecting on them their own feelings. And just because you feel sad it doesn't mean the other person is very busy.
No, because
they're busy.
well, the narcissistic type will also, the only reason they would think of you is because they're thinking, what can I use next? Oh, I wonder, could I use that? It's not a sort of, oh, I've been longing for you and I've been holding back from texting you. No, it's simply I wonder, could I just pick, I need a bit of supply, I need a bit of something. Let's pick that one up for a minute,
Right. So that's where people have to get really responsible and not playing into the hands of this game. It's a very dangerous one. So if you're sitting around right now waiting for your narcissist to call you and you're really excited because there was a little text message or a voicemail or even a phone call or anything, okay, don't get too excited because it doesn't mean what you might think it means.
We say it flippantly, and that's not to take away from, the real pain that people go through, the real unrequited love, that kind of love addiction. I mean, these are really powerful emotions.
Extremely. Causing complex PTSD, which is trauma, unhealed trauma, old unhealed trauma. And so where does it come from? How was it set up? Because mommy dearest or daddy dearest or somebody who was the caretaker also lacked empathy, also toxically tied that baby to a person who did not care or did not care enough. And so this is where the template was formed. And so this is the low bar that the person is used to. So intracyclically, they're thinking, well, this feels familiar. This feels familial. So I'm going to do life on these terms. It's just that life on that terms, those terms are the same life that you had in the trauma bond childhood wound era. So you're basically doing a what the Freud, okay? Which is why I call the show Dr. Judy WTF, because you keep repeating these narcissistic patterns with people who just lack empathy and don't care and don't bond properly. And so you bond, they don't, so you're screwed.
Don't bond at all.
Wow, right.
No.
And so in a minute, I'd like to open it up to phone calls and questions. And you have two people here, so you can please call in, ask away.
Some of my clients, Dr. Judy, they say, well, how come some narcissistic partners that they've had, how come some of them do reach back out after the discard happens and others don't? And I was sort of trying to grapple with this a bit and doing a bit of research, and the thinking is, and you'll probably have thoughts on it as well, the thinking is that when they do reach out, it's because they believe they can still control you. But when they don't reach back to you, it's because they believe that they have actually lost control of you and that they can't come back in and get that back. So that's the reason for the extended ghosting and no reaching back out. Okay, it's not that they just can't be bothered with you. It's actually that you've done something that for them is like, okay, the mask has slipped. This person knows too much.
Yes.
I can't.
So a few things, okay? Number one, they may not call because they're busy with their new supply, or they're busy with several supplies, so they don't really need you. That's one reason. The other is just what you said, that the person unmasked them.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And so living behind this false self, this house of cards, is really a lot of shame and guilt. The toxic shame that they live in, which is why they have to wall up with narcissistic defenses and why they don't want to connect on a human level, because connection proved to be inadequate or painful, or just not even a blueprint that they
it's a trauma
experience of. Okay, so how is this all formed? Child neglect, spoiling, smothering, idealizing the child without their earning it, and then ultimately criticizing them for not doing it right. So there's this kind of like a bouncy thing of, you're great, well, now you're not great. Look at you, shame on you. You disappointed mommy, you disappointed daddy. You didn't get an A+ on your homework. Okay, so this creates a very imbalanced sense of self in the person. So that's why they're all over the map. They're with this one and that one, and signing somebody new on board, and then dropping the old one, and then dinging the old one with a message so they could keep the ball going. Yes.
There's actually, there is no self that's been formed, because, you know, there has, in early years, there was no healthy individuation or separation that took place from the mother. And so the self is not there. There's an emptiness in the narcissist, and that's why they've got to keep filling up, haven't they?
On both ends, right, on both ends. The person who's pursuing the narcissist is empty because they're trying to people please, and they're trying to get the attention and the love, and the narcissist is just using that person to fulfill on their need to be grandiose, okay, or valid.
But there is a self on the side of the more codependent, and that's what the narcissist is attracted to. They're really attracted to your personality, your sense of yourself, because that's what they don't have, and they're wanting to siphon it from you.
However, I'm sure you've seen this in your treatment room. Sometimes a narcissist will discount and discard a very intelligent, very valuable, intact human being, and substitute that person out for what they call lower hanging fruit, because they lose control. The gig is up. The person outsmarts them, outshines them. So they have to be on top. They've got to be in control. And so the lower hanging fruit allows them to have more control and more power. And the naivete of that person is very attractive, because they don't see that they're being had. Okay?
Yes.
They could play it longer.
Yeah.
So I want to open it up for any calls, questions. Does anybody want to call in and ask some questions, and maybe share their experience with a romantic relationship with a narcissist, whether it be a male or a female partner, or any partner, really? What was it like for you? And what did it do to you? And how did it damage your psyche? What symptoms it left you with, and what kind of narcissistic abuse symptoms are you today suffering from as a result of this toxic bond? And by the way, I'm going to be commencing my filming of Healing from Narcissistic Abuse this weekend, and hopefully I'll actually have this video available in the next couple of months. It's a very, very deep dive into healing from narcissistic abuse, and really delving into the cause behind it, and what makes people stay in much longer than they should, or even go in to begin with, and how to heal from the toxic ties with this individual and release the psychological poison that is making you sick. So that's what I'm working on. Hopefully it'll be done in a couple of months. And I'd very much like to hear from you. So if you're on the receiving end of a trauma bond, and involved in a romantic relationship or trying to extricate from one, or if you already know that you are the narcissist, well, good for you if you call in, because the first step in healing from the narcissistic wall is saying, I have a wall, I have an injury. And even though it's a lot of fun to use people, I'm not really getting full value out of this. My life is not richer. My life is not emotionally better. I don't have a proper family. Everybody around me seems to be really upset. The children are not doing well. My husband, wife, or partner is looking pretty depressed and sad and stressed, and as a matter of fact, getting even somatically sick, because that's what it does. So please do call in, or if you have any questions, please leave that in the chat room, and we can have that question read to us and answer it.
I do have a question, if you guys don't mind. This is from Cheryl. What do you think about really, really picky people that have over-the-top standards and requirements of others? Are those considered narcissistic people?
Well, that's a great question. Really, over the top? You mean they've got to be perfect over the top like that? Well, you can, you have a right to set any standard you want, but you have to understand that people may not want to go with your standards. Okay, so you'll eliminate a lot of people if your standards are, number one, let's start here, okay? Number one, what about you? What do you bring to the table? Because if you bring very little to the table and you want all that in a bag of chips, that's pretty narcissistic. Wouldn't you say, Christiana? So
absolutely, great point.
Right, but if you bring a lot to the table and you want somebody else that brings a lot to the table and you're picky about that, I think that's fair. I'll be the first one to say, good for you, okay? But just watch out what you're putting on that list, okay? And make sure that it's not so extensive that you end up alone. And there's got to be...
Well, that's what I was going to say.
Yes.
It could also be a defense mechanism. You make an extensive list so that you don't have to ever actually meet somebody. No one's ever going to meet those standards. So it protects you from having to enter into a relationship. So it's just...
It depends.
That could also be another...
Correct. There's no easy answer to this one. We'd have to really know more. However, on a surface level, okay, so why are the standards so high? Is it because, as Christiana mentioned, you're a little bit scared to be hurt and vulnerable, so you want to keep the bar really high and make sure everybody jumps through all your hoops? Well, okay, people aren't going to jump through all your hoops, so you have to meet them somewhere and negotiate some things. And I think that's where the relationship gets real, is when you start negotiating things like, oh, Billy, I really like you, but the truth is, I don't like the fact that you are late all the time when you pick me up on a date. And then if the person is anybody that's relationship ready, he or she will say, wow, I'm so sorry about that. Let me really pay attention to that, or I'll make it up to you, or something. Or look, I'm a doctor, I'm on call. Sometimes I have to take a call last minute. And if we're going to date, you have to understand that I may not be on a perfect schedule because I have a huge obligation. So there's got to be a conversation about it. Okay.
Yes, because it could be quite narcissistic if you're sort of you're saying, right, this other person needs to meet all my needs, and they've got to do it perfectly, or else they're not good enough. And in reality, relationships aren't that. It's reality is that you know, we're both imperfect human beings, but we're choosing to grow together, rather than, you know, using this person to fit into what I want and what I need, and there being no mutual kind of common ground almost.
Exactly. And so one of the dangers of developing oneself is that the more you're developed and evolved, in a sense, you have the right to say, well, I want somebody else that's also developed and evolved and healthy and conscious and making great choices in life. And then you're kind of narrowing the pool, which is not the worst thing in the world, because you know, you want to be selective, and that's the most important decision in the world. Who's going to be your partner? So pick wisely. It's just that you might have to let go of something. So what if I
think it's having the basic standards, isn't it, right? For you,
ethical, and
these are the non-negotiables sort of thing. But I'm open to.
Yeah, so, you know, to me, some basic non-negotiables is if you're addicted to drugs and alcohol, that's not a really great thing to bring into a relationship. If you if you're a cheater, that's not a great thing to bring into a relationship. If you don't own your own stuff, that's not a great thing to bring into a relationship. If you don't brush your teeth and have good hygiene, that's not a good thing to bring into the relationship, right? If you're not healthy and you're not taking care of yourself on some level, that's not a good thing to bring into the relationship. And so I think people have the right to select a healthy partner. However, you have to be that healthy partner to say,
you do.
I want a healthy partner.
I love that, Dr. Judy. You know, I think, you know, in the world today, it's all about, okay, write a list about what you want in a partner. That's going to manifest, and, you know, that's what will happen. But, you know, part of that is actually becoming that person that you want to be with.
Yes, exactly.
In order to bring them into your life.
Look, if you're sitting there and you're grossly overweight and you don't have a job and you're smoking and you're eating your Lay's potato chips and you're sitting there going like, I'll only date women who are stick thin and marathon runners and have education and keep the house neat and clean and have you know, all that going for them. And then you're sitting there and you've got none of that going for you. Well, then how dare you? Okay. That's pretty narcissistic, isn't it?
And I think also, you know, a key thing also that, you know, when we're thinking about dating or, you know, meeting the man of our dreams, or for men meeting a woman of their dreams, you know, one of the other big vulnerabilities, besides that yearning for love and connection with someone, is the financial drive. You know, often you can sort of, if the narcissist is wealthy or, you know, has a good financial grounding, that can be the lure into the relationship. They're going to offer me this security in that sense as well. Right. So if, you know, it's good to be able to bring your own financial independence to the table as well, if you're able to, because that gives you that common ground rather than the potential for control in that area too.
And, you know, I just want to say that not everyone brings the same thing to the table. So one might bring finances, then another person might bring stability and a beautiful home and socializing and making community contacts to the table. So it's all about synergy. Okay, so it might not be money dollar to dollar, or you know, it might not be exactly like that, but it just has to be a balance of, well, I'm bringing this, you're bringing this is going to really make me a better person, and this is going to really make you a better person, and let's put it together in a way where both of us enhance each other. Okay, and that's not narcissistic.
No, not at all. Absolutely.
So
I guess it's just, when if it's a narcissistic person, their aim is to make you dependent on them for your self-esteem, but also your finances and your safety and security and all of that. And I guess just, to sort of, if you can, to somehow safeguard yourself, is to have a little bit of your own financial, little bit of financial backing yourself, so you're not vulnerable to that kind of dependence.
So here's the difference. So if somebody is powering, we have a call?
No, we don't have a call, unfortunately. Call in, everybody. Call in.
Okay, so
we do have a question, though.
Okay, go ahead.
How do you reconcile the idea of not cheating with the idea that men are less monogamous than men?
Because you make a commitment, because you value your partner more than you're cheating. So that's how you reconcile. You've got to evaluate it. Oh, okay, well, I'm not monogamous, but then that brings me no safety or no solidity or no stability and no family and nothing to build on. So even if you're not monogamous, then you decide, if I really commit to this person, I could build something. So, that's more valuable to me than having a bunch of partners. It's a decision and a commitment, and then being ethical about it and keeping your word. We can't just want what we want when we want and expect everything to be. It just doesn't go that way. You have a call, so hello.
You're on the air. Go ahead and talk to Dr. Judy and Christiana, sorry.
Hi, Dr. Judy.
Hi, how you doing? Who's this?
Hi, my name is Barry.
Nice to meet you. Thank you for calling in.
Sure. Thanks for this topic. And both of you have really given me a lot of insight into an explanation for things that I've experienced. And I have a question. I want to keep it concise. Let's say you're in this relationship with the person that has some of the characteristics of narcissism, but I don't want to use labels because it's not fair if someone's not been, properly diagnosed. But the characteristics and the signs and everything and the patterning is all there, as well as your slide one, which is the history on both sides of having this shattered sort of origin and attachment.
Yes.
So let's say you've gone through this and the person that has the narcissistic characteristics has repeatedly gone outside of the relationship when the power was not there and the sex was non-existent. And you said something about each person putting in and bringing different characteristics to the relationship. And what is the refusal to go to therapy? So non-participation in therapy that you go as a couple, and then absolute refusal to the point of being willing to lose the relationship to go to one-on-one therapy for themselves.
Okay, so you mentioned a lot of things. So first of all, you don't have to be a diagnostician to know when something's off. You see, I use narcissism just conveniently as a word to describe a series of patterns that include grandiosity, entitlement, apathy,
lack of empathy,
and the list goes on. But I think that you don't have to, and I'm not really that fond of diagnosis myself. I look at things as a system gone wrong. That's how I see it. And if I'm with a person who doesn't make me feel good, who's demeaning me, devaluing me, destroying me, taking me for granted, stepping out of the relationship, that's enough information. I don't need to go to the DSM anything, okay? So,
yeah.
So if you're feeling any of those things, then trust that something's rotten in the state of Denmark, okay? It's not okay. And so I think part of the reason narcissists go to therapy is, for example, they want to prove that they're right. Okay, they want to pull one over the therapist so that the wife or the husband will shut up already and go away. Or they won't go to therapy because they don't want to be exposed. Or they're really not that interested in working on the relationship. So why bother? I mean, it's just too much trouble. They'd rather be out screwing around, right? And getting some more supply. So why waste the time? Because when you work at something, then you're invested in the something. And that's the problem. These people are not invested. They're invested in themselves.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yes. And Carrie, it's it sounds, many narcissistic types, they also have a sex addiction. So, a possible avenue for you would be to suggest that they go to some kind of 12-step group for sex addiction, as opposed to having one-on-one.
You're funny to think that would. It's a great idea. That would be even more embarrassing than private, hidden, something you could hide, right?
Yes.
To be seen and potentially to be found out that you're going to that. I can't imagine that would be astonishing if that were something I think I could.
So
that would happen.
I think we have to stop worrying about what they're going to do or not do. Okay. So it's not about what people do. It's about what we do with what people do. Okay, yes. I'll say that again. It's not about what they do. It's about what we do about it. So if something doesn't.
Well, you have to reclaim your own power in the relationship dynamic.
Absolutely.
And stop waiting around for them and take care of yourself.
Right. And reclaim yourself and say, I'm sorry, this is not working for me. And then if they can't step up to the plate and they're not motivated enough and they keep violating the same thing over and over, then you know their capacity, you know where they stand. And why would you want to invest another iota of energy into a person like that? Okay, so now we've got to turn that mirror around and you look at yourself in the mirror and say, why am I going after people who reject me and demean me and don't commit to me? Okay, so now it's not even about them.
Exactly.
It really isn't. So then, what's the right thing to do is ask yourself, what am I doing here? Why am I allowing this person to treat me like this? Why am I investing in them? Why am I wasting time with empty promises and no follow-up? And then you're going to get somewhere. If you're waiting for them to fulfill on their empty promises, you're going to be waiting a long time, like forever, okay? If you're going to be waiting for them to change, you're going to be waiting another lifetime, okay? So how many lifetimes do we have? One that I know of, the other ones, I guess, maybe, next life, reincarnation. But let's try to get this one right and stop,
Well, if you can do it right in this one, your soul elevates and you don't have to repeat this challenge of this energy that's in the form and expressing in this way that is calling out something within ourselves, just as you're saying, what's in me that's attracting me to this, that I am focusing on that rather than on myself.
Right.
And if you can understand and learn the lesson, then you can elevate beyond the relationship, and then it'll fall away almost naturally, because as you take your power back,
exactly,
you no longer are available.
That's exactly my philosophy. You elevate yourself above that, so that as you mature, as you grow, these people won't be interesting to you. Okay, they're interesting now because you've been groomed to be toxically tied to them, or they're familiar or familial, or you're chemically bonded to them through sex, something, right? But if you elevate beyond this, then you'll look at that very same person and they will no longer look the same to you. You'll be thinking, wow, what was I thinking? Geez, I didn't see that about the person. Ugh.
And that always happens once you're out of the relationship.
Yeah.
Once you get a bit of perspective, then you start to really see clearly exactly what you were embroiled in. And I love what you're saying, you know, Carrie and Dr. Judy as well, you know, that if we are attracting these types, it's not that everything's gone wrong necessarily. It's the fact that we still need them on our healing journey. You know, we actually need them to up level.
Well, exactly. If they weren't here playing this role for us to work this out within ourselves, then we would not be able to work it out. So it's a way to say thank you for the experience, and that's when you know you've really learned it, I think.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
I call those cursed by design. So sometimes our narcissist partner are cursed by designs to learn the lesson, elevate, and then move on, because then they just are not attractive to us anymore.
Yes.
And I know we only have a couple of minutes of time, but I wanted to thank you for calling in. And for those of you listening, thank you so much for being listeners of the show. You can always download my book, Be the Cause: Healing Human Disconnect, or order it on Amazon. You can buy a copy of the video series, which is available to you to learn the mind map. And I'm going to be working on healing from narcissistic abuse, and that will be out in hopefully a couple of months. And all of you are welcome, of course, to call the Psychological Healing Center and to avail yourself of a free consultation. And please subscribe to the channel. And please, if you do download the book, pay it forward. This is something that I would like everyone to have a copy of. So if you get that free PDF, then all you have to do, or if you have the links to the website and the radio show, all you have to do is forward it to all your friends and family and all your narcissists too. Okay? And it's just one other thing that I wanted to mention, because I had it on my mind before we started the show, is that maybe we'll pick it up next time. When you really, really expose your vulnerabilities to a narcissist in the sexual context, okay? And some of you will know what I mean. You actually feel like they've penetrated your soul and betrayed your soul. It's like your soul effed.
Takeover.
Okay? And it's the most painful thing in the world, because they're deep, deep, deep down in your body and in your soul. And they pull out, use you, discard you. And I can't think of a more painful experience. Okay, so we'll pick that up. Thank you everyone for being here, and all of the people who've asked questions and called in, and we'll see you next time. And thank you for tuning in. Good night, everyone.
Good night.